30. There we go. There's an official intro, John. I forgot to hit go live again. I mean, that happens,
Hey,
right?
you expecting high quality from a couple of idiots behind their computers? No, this is not going to be anything like
This is
what
not
you
the show.
expect. No,
This is
go
not
somewhere
the
else.
show. This is not the show you were looking for. Welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. It's been a Monday. It's your Tuesday, John, so I know this doesn't quite count as a Monday for you, but it is a Monday for me.
Yep.
And it's been quite the Monday. We had snow about a week ago that hasn't left the ground.
Yep.
And then we had an ice storm on top of that snow, and then we have had a snowstorm on top of that ice.
Yeah, Canadians call that Thursday.
Yeah.
So, welcome to our world.
Yeah, so everything is cold, and the weather is giving me a migraine. So that was my morning. So doing better now. It's almost dinner time. So I finally got over the hump, and here we are doing a podcast. No, there's a lot of news to talk about this week. This first one, I'm going to start off with a rant.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about
rants.
the actual meat
Rants
of
are
the
good.
content here.
Sure.
Share the screen. Got to share the screen for it to come up. There we go. All right. So my quick rant here is I love you, Anantech, but for the love of God, we get that you need money for your wonderful content, but how much advertising can you pack into a space before we lose
That's a
track
lot of banners.
what we visited the site for?
Yeah.
They're all the same, by the way.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we got to have the 4th and the 5th down here at the bottom.
Yeah.
So this article is well paid for. So thank you, ASRock, for sponsoring this article.
One of my favorite ones is, and this is a bit, I've seen this before, but they make the whole background the ad, and if you click anywhere else on the ad or on the article, it takes you automatically to the ad.
Because that's the kind of lead generation you really want.
Sure, why not?
So I guess AMD is looking to be the king of the CPU landscape again, and they've released this monster 64-bit processor, or 64-core processor. So this is the new AMD Threadripper Pro.
Right.
So there's a review of this just monstrous CPU.
What kind of socket is that? Is it, that looks like a different type of socket than what I'm used to.
Yeah, this is
computational graphics go brr. Love that.
Yeah, this is like a giant CPU. It is quite the beast. This is the kind of thing you use in a very dedicated like content development studio. Like you're working on AAA games, or you're running like a bazillion VMs to do some sort of crazy development. This is not your average developer desktop you're looking at here.
Yeah, that looks like a different type of socket. I don't know what kind that is.
I'm not sure what it is.
It's been a couple of months since I put together a computer, so.
And this wouldn't be, I don't believe, something that you'd normally put together either, because this is like a server-style machine. So this is like up there with like the Xenon processors and stuff like that. So it's going to be a platform that's, not your usual ATX variant. I thought this was kind of interesting. I haven't looked at this stuff in quite a bit either myself, but this article kind of was piquing my interest because they talked about graphics a little bit in here. And this is something that you'd maybe use in like a rendering farm or something, but you wouldn't be doing the graphics rendering directly on this type of thing. You might do You might do some like encoding and stuff like that, but
Yeah,
that's not quite the
this looks like a
purpose.
very very good desktop candidate. The power requirements alone are quite substantial. I don't think I would use this in a farm environment because your heat thermal sort of your heat characteristics would be off the chart. So, but it's got about 280 watts requirement.
Hmm.
So nice.
But it is on par with those server processors. Was I guess
Sure.
the point here. It's a Xenon competitor.
Hmm.
Um, One thing I wanted to pick out of this, I talk about video rendering a
Okay.
lot, and I thought this was kind of interesting. So we've got this massive beefy CPU here,
Hmm.
and they're talking about doing like rendering in Blender, which is a 3D modeling tool.
Right.
It's all about using the right tool for the job here.
Hmm.
And this is showing the Blender custom render benchmark test. We've got like the $488 i9 processor. This is more on par with what a dev box would be. You know, if
Hmm.
you're working on Visual Studio, things like that, and maybe
Hmm.
playing some games, those type of things. The average consumer market CPUs are in here, right? This is your normal setup, four to $800, right? These are your like server level, like Xenon and so on. This guy's way up here at, 5 grand for this thing.
Yeah.
But you can just see by the benchmarks there in this Blender benchmark that it's definitely an improvement over this desktop level processor, this consumer level processor down here. So this is interesting enough on its own that it's showing, this is worth the money if this is, you're in you're running like a Pixar type of a server farm or something like that, and you need some real
Okay.
horsepower under the hood.
Hmm.
Scroll down a bit though. We go to Crisis GPU only gameplay. Okay. So this is just running a consumer video game from a few years back, and you see the opposite sort of trend here. So the point being is use the right tool for the job. And as talking with some friends one time about all this live streaming that we do, and the right machine for doing live streaming requires more of a graphics card than a CPU. And the
Hmm.
reason is the way that these pieces of software have been tuned is they're tuned for those graphics cards. The graphics cards in your modern desktops have encoding hardware on them to do these video intensive tasks, like taking a live stream and compressing down like a 4K display down to like a 1080p video stream in real time. And if you don't have that dedicated encoder on your rig, what you end up with is a situation like this where no matter how beefy your processor is, it's not geared towards uh, taking that video stream and encoding it. So you get kind of this negative return on investment here.
This strikes me as a contention, basically. Like you're probably not taking full advantage of the CPU in this instance. That's what I would lean towards. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
why this is not performing as well, but
Well, they
yeah,
outlined it
probably
here.
it just can't work as well.
Yeah, so they're limited to 32 threads
Okay.
and up to 23 cores. So it's only taking a fraction of the GPU in mind.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the narrative I was trying to go with here is,
Oh, okay.
this isn't the right type of software to run on this type of hardware.
That's always been
And
the case, though, dude. I mean,
yeah,
you're always going to have that.
yeah, and I've talked to a lot of folks that run live streams and such, and
Hmm.
they have lower end MacBooks or things like that,
Sure.
and it's really tough on that kind of hardware.
Yep.
And when you tell them, PC with a dedicated graphics card or really high end like Mac workstation is what you're going to need, and the price tags on those Mac workstations are just up there. And they're like, well, why? It's only live streaming, and it's
Hmm.
like, yeah, you look at what this software is geared towards, and it's geared towards running on those dedicated encoding pieces of hardware.
Yeah.
When you have a CPU, it's, it's a general processing unit. Like it does all sort of computational tasks at the cost of it's doing it all in software, right? So if you don't have a hardware encoder built into your machine, you're relying on the CPU to handle all of that work and emulate basically a video encoder.
Yep.
And just even one of the cheaper mainstream graphics cards is going to have a hardware-based encoder in it, meaning like it is like the software baked into this device as firmware.
Yep. I'm with you.
And it's just instant rather than any kind of real computational task. So this kind of stuff comes up. You can't always throw money at a situation and expect it to be.
Well, you can, but you may get different results. So
yeah,
I think I think generally speaking, if you had this much money to spend on a CPU, you should be fine. It will more than perform. So
yeah,
because most people who get CPUs like this also have 128 gigs of RAM and probably a very decent graphics card as well to go along with it. They're not just gonna, it's like, oh yeah, I'll put it's like putting the top of the line spoiler on a really crappy car, So you're gonna you're gonna deck out the whole thing.
Right. I just thought it was interesting though how much software can impact the performance of these things as well. So you gotta kind of pair things up right. You gotta have the right, if you're gonna be doing a certain task, you need to spend a little bit of time doing the due diligence and figuring out, what hardware works best for that, and spending most of the time you want to spend the least amount of money possible to do the thing that you want to do the best way possible. So sites like this can really help with that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. And
so
just
Nantec,
coming back to that analogy I was saying earlier, like, the software in this instance is like the driver. So, if you have a crappy driver behind the wheel of a Ferrari, that car ain't going to go anywhere.
Yeah. But I always rely on these type of things when I'm getting ready to, get a new machine. What am I working on with this machine? Sure. Am I doing gaming? Am I doing streaming? Am I just, using it on the road as a presentation machine? That sort of thing. It's always good to come back and bump some of those ideas off benchmarks.
Speaking of horrific ideas and terrible machines, I will send you right now a link of something that if you are in the market for something awful and you're looking for something that really requires the horsepower of I guess something like this, but in the form, and you've always wondered, why can't I have this in the form of a laptop that is horrific. I'm going to send you a link here in the private chat, Ed, that you may or may not want to show our viewers that I think is fantastic. I think this is really up there with pushing what we think is possible with laptops rather. And this is behold, this is known as the
fresh hell.
Yes. So this is basically this is a prototype. So this is the Aurora 7 prototype, the world's first 7-screen laptop. So I would say that the quality control on this is a little bit needs to be desired. But if you're one of those guys who needs 7 screens, this would be the laptop for you. I don't know what this would look like getting onto an airplane, but there you go.
Unless I'm doing like day trading, like I cannot for the life of me figure out why you'd need this many screens.
No one needs this. No, that's the joke. No one needs this.
I know what this is for. This is so you can view articles on a Nantec and get all of the ad space.
Yeah. I was just ripping on this idea of having too much power. So, yeah. Anyway, there you go.
Just like we needed that flip animation.
That's right.
And the show is off to its usual start. Why I built a live stream. Let's segue into live streaming because this is Lightstream. Yes. Okay, same difference. We can segue anyway.
So Lightstream is kind of in the memes right now online, not in terms of the haha memes, but it's part of the sort of developer zeitgeist right now. Lightstream is basically a new approach towards building apps, and it's not revolutionary by any means, but it is interesting. So what Lightstream is basically you package up your application into a single sort of you basically create one package. Everything within it is that's basically all self-contained. So it's an in-process SQLite database running in process within the app. But is the interesting part of it is that it's completely transparent to the developer, but it's constantly uploading a backup, if you will, to Amazon S3. So it's using basically this sort of approach where no matter what happens to the process, it's always being backed up to this remote location. And it really does simplify your application topology, architecture, etc., which is the basis of this technology called Lightstream. So, so basically this was it's a technology that's being kind of discussed. Some people like it, some people don't.
No, I think it's really cool.
Interesting. Yeah.
I actually know a possible use case or something like this. This was years ago, I was talking to some developers that worked for a shipping company that people are probably familiar with. It's located in Louisville. Won't give out the name, but it's pretty obvious which one it is. But essentially, their brown trucks would go around and deliver things to people's homes and offices. And inside of each one of those trucks was a computer that the little tablet thing would dock to. And that computer had a local SQLite database on it. And then when the trucks would go back to the distribution center, it would then wirelessly connect to their infrastructure and upload and sync that SQLite database to the larger database there in the facility. So you had all these little mobile databases driving around the country and redocking and what do you call that? That process where you merge the databases together. Having a brain fart. No, there's a replication. They would all replicate back to a main source of truth. So I think that's something like that. I could definitely see this being used for, where you have lots of apps on the go, and you may be disconnected from your infrastructure, and then you need to kind of sync back and get all that stuff synced back up.
Right.
Pretty cool. Definitely like that. Speaking of syncing up with things, this is an article up on blogs.telerik.com. Introduction to Grpc and .NET Core and .NET 5. So if you haven't checked out .NET 5 and Grpc yet, this is really interesting stuff. So Grpc is a Google-based kind of interface for doing remote procedure call, or similar to how SignalR works, if you've ever dealt with SignalR. So it does bidirectional streaming, and it can do those real-time applications because you have that remote procedure call part of it. So you can, have the server calling into your client and telling it to update the UI and whatnot. So this kind of gives you an idea of how to create the server, create the definitions. Unlike SignalR, the definitions are in this this proto language. It's
they're called protocol buffers, and I actually looked into this when I was doing some research into our API at Octopus. We were, for various reasons, but protocol buffers they're like another programming language, and they allow you to represent basically the messages you want to send between 2 points. What's nice about that is that it's all basically reliant upon code generation, and the way to represent it is pretty easy, actually. So you describe these messages using this language, which is called protocol buffers, and then those are serialized using the variety of tools that they have. This also uses HTTP2 underneath as the transport. HTTP2 is the messaging protocol, but basically the way these messages are conveyed are through HTTP2. And so you've got some nice wins there in terms of, keep alive and all the nice things that go into HTTP2. So web-friendly protocol, good way to represent messages in a sort of framework agnostic, language agnostic way. So there are some good benefits to this.
Yeah. And when you consume these things with .NET, he's showing here, when you add your protobuf file to your .NET app, the compiler will then take that protobuf file and generate a class, a .NET class based on it. And then if you need to extend that class, you just either inherit from it, or you can even do partial classes and whatnot to extend those things. So it's very
the language
compatible
support in protocol buffers is actually quite good. That's one of its strengths. That's why people are using it.
Yeah. So this works really well with .NET. I haven't had any experience on any other platforms, but on .NET, they've really wrapped this up nicely. So you can plug this into an ASP.NET server. You could also use it on the front end in Blazor. It's natively supported there, so you don't have to write any JavaScript. You just take this protobuf file, and both your server and your client both know what that translation is into .NET code, and you put it in a common space, and you can share it across both sides of your project, which is pretty unique to Blazor, I think. So this is all really cool stuff, and it'll get you started. Again, blogs.telerik.com. Look for that one at the top of the page. This random GitHub repo, John. What's going on here?
Yeah, so this is GitHub 1S. Basically, this is a service that if you take any arbitrary GitHub URL and put 1S in the URL, it will basically load VS Code within the browser with that source file. So, using that example that they show with VS Code, this will basically load that repository with Visual Studio Code loaded within it.
How meta.
Yeah, it's very meta.
So it's running Visual Studio Code in the browser with the source code for that repo.
I think it's called Monaco, or whatever the product name is called, for the web aspect of VS Code. And so they've loaded that along with the other parts and pieces within your browser so that you can view the structure of the repo within your browser, which maybe provides a nice experience for people who want to just see the code.
So this is a read-only type of a situation here.
Yeah,
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's just, just basically provides a mechanism
cool,
of,
actually.
Just looking at stuff. If you want to traverse, if you don't like GitHub's way of rendering out files and you don't want to fork something, you don't want to clone something, you can just pull it up with the 1S. Just inject that 1S before the .com and away you go.
So I like to have multiple tools like this in my toolbox. This is one that I have. You can see floating off to the side. It's called Octotree. Does a similar thing, but instead of navigating it in an IDE, you're navigating it in the browser, so you can go and navigate to various parts of the GitHub repo rather than try to dig through the the breadcrumbs and whatnot that's up here. So this gives you another way to do it, but this is not exactly the same as what we've got here. I like this too. Like, this stuff can be super helpful for presentations.
Oh yeah.
So if I'm on a live stream and I'm looking for something in one of my projects or somebody else's, I can just put 1S inside that URL, and I'm in a very familiar environment. That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm going to bookmark that one. I like that one a lot, John.
Cool.
I like it a lot. Good stuff,
Gets filed under other.
Staying safe with .NET containers. This is something that I know you're well read on, and I am not.
Sure.
I'm not a DevOps or containers guy. I don't know anything about this. So teach me, John. What is this about?
That's fine. So Richard Lander is a member of the .NET team, and he's written this article saying about staying safe with .NET containers. And basically, it's a post that espouses the benefits of containerizing your applications and gives you a level of basically isolation that normally would not be exposed unless through VMs or other means. Containerizations of applications is a very hot topic. And the thing about these containers is that they can be very short-lived. So sometimes you can spin up these containers and they'll only live for a handful of minutes and then they'll be spun down. The nice thing about containers is that they basically provide all the infrastructure that's available to you on the platform is exposed to you through the container, and they're self-contained. That's why they're called containers, basically. They're based on images that you construct, and so you are guaranteed basically an not impermeable, but rather immutable environment upon which you can run your applications. Now, that has different sort of aspects associated with it, but this is basically providing you that level of safety, if you will, when actually running code in a public environment. And so containerization is something that I think is worthwhile investigating. We utilize it heavily. A lot of our customers use it as well. And if you're utilizing a technology like Kubernetes or Docker, etc., you can get up and running pretty quickly. Allows you to scale quite nicely as well. So, but Richard goes through the whole point of creating these things. There's Docker Hub, which allows you to pull these things down very quickly. You can basically create these using the CLI as you see here very quickly, and then simply execute your application inside the container. Now, there are some things about containers you need to know, like pulling in environment, because containers are immutable. Some things that you would think are dynamic aren't available, and you have to do special sort of things to get around that issue, but it's totally possible. So reaching out beyond the container to, say, IO or environment variables or things of that nature, you need to make sure you take care of that in a special way. There are APIs that expose that, but other than that, your code can run basically within there and have no problems. So you're basically isolating the potential problems to the container itself. So
yeah, like I said, I don't deal with these too often, but I do kind of get the gist of why they're important, and what makes it interesting to me is that it makes your infrastructure more portable. So you can go from one platform to another. Say you're hosting in Azure or AWS, you can move things around a little bit between those two infrastructures a little bit easier. It's not going to be just pick it up and move it completely. There's going to be a little bit of work required to do it, but it's a lot less work than trying to move something that's on just say a VM or especially like an on-prem situation where you've got something installed on a physical box and you have to try to move that off somewhere. So I know there's still a lot of that stuff out there. On-premise or on-premises is still a big thing, especially with companies that deal with any kind of government work and stuff like that. And you can at least containerize on that on-premises stuff in case you're ever given the ability to move it off, put it in the cloud and whatnot. So there's a lot of benefit to this kind of technology.
Yep.
Oh, SolarWinds, the most sophisticated attack ever. Says Microsoft.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting. So we're learning more and more about the compromise of SolarWinds. For those who don't know, SolarWinds provides monitoring software for a wide variety of companies and organizations around the world. They're one of the best sort of monitoring, best known monitoring solutions for applications. This vulnerability was actually discovered by accident by a company I think called FireEye, I believe. But the way in which the actors in this system went about compromising SolarWinds was actually very clever. They actually went to very great lengths to disguise themselves, so much so that they were naming their class files in their source code like business enterprise-y type class names. They were using the protocol that was established within it already so that none of the virus or malware detection programs would pick it up. They integrated this as part of the source code tree, I believe, which was in TeamCity. So some people looked at JetBrains and like, dude, you guys have been compromised. Like, no, guys, it's just they're just using source control that way. So yeah, SolarWinds is definitely an interesting sort of ongoing story. They think that it might have been in there for a long time. So it's interesting to see kind of where this leads. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's a supply chain vulnerability or attack vector, where basically a supply chain in a software sense is you're using these guys somewhere along the line to do to maintain your infrastructure. And as a result, if they get compromised, then you have the potential to be compromised as well. And so, yeah, definitely interesting in terms of where this is all going.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. We have the SolarWinds thing come up, and it's all over the news. It did happen during an election cycle, so that's one part of it. So it's all over the news. It's still very much in the mainstream news.
Sure.
But in 2018, I think it was, or 2015, Bloomberg dropped an article. I was trying to find the exact article, but it was behind a paywall, where China had been putting chips on motherboards that were built for server infrastructure, and they were secretly embedding these chips to do essentially, the similar thing that the SolarWinds hack did, to offer up backdoors and listen in on data, things like that. And these made it into organizations like Apple and Amazon. And it came down to some FBI surveillance that happened in, I think it was Famicom. Is that the right name of the company? One of the, I guess maybe Supermicro. There's some other manufacturer over there that was investigated as part of this.
Sure.
But this, like, even though it was like front page of the Bloomberg's magazine, it never really caught on with media. Like, you never heard about it on TV or news or anything. It's really bizarre the way it just kind of got swept under the rug.
I think at this level, it's hard for your layman to understand, and I'm not saying that they should understand. I'm just saying, like, I think people's eyes start to go cross when you start talking about BIOS and chips and things like that, and I can understand why. It's, people talk to me about, I don't know, cars and engines and things like that, and I'm like, I'm so bored, I don't care. So it's understandable. I was, I heard about this, and I was kind of, in the era of Snowden and the revelations that came out around what's going on there, you would suspect that there would be some interest in this. I think this also kind of relates to what you're seeing around various places with Huawei chips with 5G, et cetera, et cetera. Certain governments are saying they won't utilize it. So I don't know if it's Huawei or not, but anyways,
that was one
there's a lot of different things going on, and I think that, I don't know. I think, you need to do due diligence, obviously, on some of these things, but it's also pretty difficult. I think if you're going to get, I've always said you're never going to have a perfectly secure system, but you can do defense in depth, and we've been advocating that for years. So don't trust everything behind your firewall. Assume there are maybe some bad actors in the system. Make sure that you're one-way encrypting your data that's, that you don't need to know about, et cetera, et cetera. Do backups. This is a very it's a very tough field to operate in sometimes. So do your best.
Yeah. I think it just shows, though, this is like a common thing in espionage these days. It's like you're going to either get hacked via software or hardware. So you better be paying attention because it's coming from somewhere.
I think the good news there is that I don't think an individual is terribly interesting. So, I've had these conversations with family members, and they're like, "Oh, are they listening on my conversations?" Like, I saw an ad for dog food bowls, and I was talking to my friend about dog food bowls, and then yesterday Facebook showed me an ad for dog food bowls. I'm like, like, I don't think I don't think anyone's listening, so
I think the confusion there is people aren't capable of grasping like the scope of this stuff, and the type of malicious activity you're talking about is very personal to the person that's describing it.
For sure.
And there is that kind of stuff that goes on, but it's not for anything more nefarious than getting them to spend their money at a store. It's advertising. They want that person to spend their money on Amazon. They want them to spend their money on a certain product. I don't want to throw any specific product out there, but you just take any product that you normally buy and just say they want your money. They're going to buy ads from people that may or may not be, using your traffic where
Yeah.
they bought from, whether they bought it from a telecom or they're getting it from Facebook, wherever. It's not necessarily malicious. It's just the kind of environment I think we're in right now.
Yeah.
The data's there. There's not a whole lot of laws around how it's passed around and sold, and these devices get listened in on, and things like that happen. That's not necessarily hacking. It's just bad practice, maybe.
Mm.
It's
Well,
it's
these
not
days
very
it's all about
straightforward with
engagement.
customers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these days it's all about engagement. So platforms are trying to kind of get you engaged more and more. And there's a great movie I watched earlier this year, last year, called The Social Dilemma that talks about that. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, so these devices, though, when you start talking about, what if China has some, any foreign entity has some kind of backdoor into these things, it's not for those same intent and purposes. Like if it's Huawei, for example, you're buying a handset phone, they're not interested in Joe Blow in his surfing habits on the internet. What they want is, out of X number of users, hopefully we have one that works for a government or um, a manufacturer that has some high end, IP that
right.
is really hard to come by, and they're transferring documents that they shouldn't be maybe using on a non-secure device, or you're learning something about some IP through that type of a device.
Sure.
It's not for dog food. It's
Yeah.
it's for secrets. They're looking for that needle in a haystack, and they can use those devices to figure that kind of thing out. That's why you see a lot of them banned from government facilities and things like that. And
Yeah,
I mean,
and
you
just to
can
be
even
clear,
go.
this is somewhat assumed and speculative on our part.
Mhm.
Basically, there's no evidence that that is actually the case, but people suspect it, and there is evidence that in some cases where things have gone awry from a hardware manufacturing perspective, like, hey, this shouldn't be
Yeah.
doing that,
Like
So
what you don't want to do is have folks that are, say, in the military that are on deployment carrying a phone with them from an uncontrolled source, right? It's got GPS capabilities. There could be a backdoor in it that's letting folks know where that phone is. It's just bad practice to, let
well, yeah,
there
you're
be an
also
open door
leaking. You're also
policy.
leaking telemetry data all the time when you're using a consumer handset. Like you're talking to towers, more than one
Mhm.
tower actually, and it doesn't take much to sort of triangulate your location. So, if you're part of a Navy SEAL team, you certainly don't want to have a consumer handset on your hands. I've seen a number of different ways in which you can get access to those things. There's what's that pineapple device that can simulate a tower and start, acting as a man in the middle, things like that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So let's take off our tinfoil hats for a minute, John, and talk about why Select Star is bad for SQL performance.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know this already. This has been kind of bashed altogether, but I think the reason why this article is particularly interesting is because this actually goes into the actual technical reasons why. What happens when you actually execute select star in a T-SQL statement?
So we have an increase in network traffic. Check.
Sure. So you got to serialize all that data that you're pulling down. So if you say select star as opposed to select name, for example, you've got to, and you only use the name in your select star statement, you've pulled down all that traffic for no good reason. A lot of these are obvious. Increased CPU usage, right? On the client side, you got,
on your client and on your server.
Yeah, for sure. So your client may decide, I'm going to cache some of this because it's built in. So if you use like a standard client in whatever
serialization
language
as well.
Sure. Yeah. That all takes CPU and memory and all that stuff. So yeah.
Can't optimize queries.
Yeah, this one's an obvious one, right? So how can a database optimize something where you're saying, give me everything?
Yeah, caching, fetching, etc. So
Yeah.
I'll give a good example of what to do. So if this is the bad practice, what I like to point people at is demos.telerik.com because
Nice.
we have actually a really good set of tools to help you not do things like this. So this is
Okay.
one that I really like, and this exists in the Kendo libraries as well, but Blazor's the latest and greatest, so we'll point at this one. And our .NET MVC controls do this as well too. So pretty much anything that we have can do this. But we have, let's see if I've got the right one here. But the idea is when you're on a data grid like this and you're paging, you don't want to send a select star up to the server and say, give me like the entire database. What if you have like 20,000 records? You don't want to dump that
you're going to do a join here.
Yeah. So what we do is we take all the metadata from this data grid, whether it's paging, sorting, filtering, all the above, and we package that up into like a little metadata source. And it's called a data grid request object. So data source request. And we feed that up to the server. And if you're using a .NET server, this works with OData as well, by the way. But if you're using a .NET server, there is an extension method that you call, which takes this very object that we send up from the data grid, and it is a expression tree based method. So you pass in the data grid's metadata. This extension method reads that metadata and turns it into an expression tree, which if you know anything about Entity Framework, Entity Framework can consume an expression tree natively and turn that into SQL code. So you get kind of this pass through of metadata that ends up on the SQL side of things as a very tightly defined SQL query that says, give me just these 10 records because that's all that's showing in this data grid. And then that response gets bubbled up and sent down to the server, and you're only first of all, you're only reading that much data from SQL, you're only sending that much JSON over the wire, and you're only serializing that much data on your client, and you're only displaying that much data on your page. So it's really highly performant, and it's literally one line of code to make this happen. So
yeah, you're basically creating a sliding window, basically. So it's this mechanism. We've been able to do this for a while. This class actually makes it really simple. So it basically implements all that logic for you.
Yeah. So it translates the UI basically into a SQL query. For lack of a, for an oversimplification of things. I mean, it gets exchanged through many hands before it ends up there. You could say it passes through like 3 different black boxes, but it's a kind of an interface for all of those black boxes to speak the same language. So
yeah, a lot of people might at this point, a lot of people at this point would be like, oh, isn't it slow because it has to go through all those intermediaries? I'm like, well, I'd rather it do that on the client or server side first before it traverses the network, because the amount of latency that you're getting orders of magnitude more performance degradation when you do stuff over the wire as opposed to in memory. So it's fine. This may take a few milliseconds, but believe me, sending a packet across the internet is going to take many, many milliseconds. So you want to make that payment up front by going through those black boxes, so to speak, and then sending only what you need across the wire.
And .NET in general is magnitudes faster at processing these expression trees than it is at reflection. So, I mean, this isn't like a slow CPU intensive process of analyzing these expression trees. It's something that it's very performant at. And it's built with Entity Framework in mind. So it's speaking the language that Entity Framework speaks. This intermediate language between SQL and .NET code is an expression tree. So it's built for that. It's not, it's not a very intensive process to do that. I'm sure there's some CPU hit, but it's negligible in the context of what you're doing. So good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Star
so
is
don't do
bad.
select star.
Telerik grid good. We'll break it down even one more time for like the cavemen. Like star bad, grid good. Use data source. TLDR. Sec 20,
Seek.
is that right? Seek? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Seek. Yeah, you've mentioned this before.
Yeah, so Seek's just like it's like a lot of these application trace monitoring tools. Splunk is a common example you'll see. Seek's really nice. We use it at Octopus Deploy, so that's part of the reason why I'm mentioning it here. But basically, a new version of Seek's out, 2021.1. Better in-memory query response times. Utilizes the latest and greatest of .NET 5. Yeah, it does a lot of adds a bunch of interesting features. So they're all summarized here, and yeah, people are interested in using it. They can.
And the weekly cadence on TypeScript pushes ahead.
Yes, I know. These guys are always, just like the VS Code team, these guys are shipping a lot. So TypeScript 4.2 RC is out, and now you can go and check out what's available there. So you can get access to this via the npm install command, and then simply utilize the latest and greatest features that are built in. So this is a blog post that kind of goes through those latest and greatest features.
So I had this debate the other day. Is this tuple or tuple, John?
I say tuple.
Tuple, like a couple?
Yeah, well, like couple, correct.
Or is it tuple like quadruple?
Yeah, I guess. So, I don't know. GIF, who knows?
I
don't
I
care.
think both.
I think it's boring, all right? So just say whatever you want to say. GUID versus GUID, I don't care.
Like the Rick and Morty episode. Let's save it for the semantics dome.
Yeah, that's right.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like TypeScript is just evolving.
Oh yeah.
Crazy rate.
Oh yeah.
Abstract construct signature.
Yep.
Is this like a static?
Well, abstract basically says.
Abstract.
This is like a, I guess in C#, it's
like C#
sort of
abstract.
Yeah, so it's
it can only be inherited from.
Correct. So it provides an inheritance model, basically. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah, some of these I haven't actually explored. So, but I just saw it and I thought people might want to check it out.
So, for a quick callback, an expression tree in .NET is an abstract class. You can only inherit from it.
Okay. That's good.
And you can only create one through a factory.
That's like
Fun
Java.
fact.
It's like
Fun
Java.
fact.
I had a problem, so I decided to use Java. Now I have a problem factory. So
I saved the best for last, John. I knew you would enjoy this one. This is your favorite topic. Not only is it Facebook, but it is VR.
All right. Lay it on me.
So this is a new ecosystem that Facebook is creating for their Oculus platform. And I'm always skeptical of these things. And I was like, sure, I'll sign up for the
so this is Minecraft
early
meets
access.
Oculus.
What's that?
Minecraft meets Oculus.
Minecraft meets Facebook meets Oculus. Yes.
Great.
You're on the right track.
Don't
So I was like, I will sign up for the experiment. I will be your guinea pig. I like to just check out new stuff, but very skeptical because I'm not a big fan of Facebook. I love the Oculus. I'm not a big fan of the Facebook, social media part of things.
Sure.
I turned this thing on and navigated around it a little bit and was not very impressed until I hit the create section. The creation tool in this has some very good potential.
Okay.
I thought this was really cool. So as somebody that's done game design before and worked in game engines, they have taken that experience of level building and made it accessible.
Didn't Microsoft do this with HoloLens when they acquired Minecraft? I thought Microsoft acquired Minecraft and then they showed a prototype of how to create a Minecraft world using HoloLens.
I don't know if they showed creating a Minecraft world or just playing the game.
Okay. I seem to remember something like that where they did the pinch to zoom thing and they went way back and they're like, okay, now I can navigate around the world, blah, blah, blah. So
yeah, I still think they're in the mode of playing though.
Okay.
This one, they've got these what are, basically dev tools that
building
are
blocks for the world, etc. Yeah. Put the house here, put the tree there.
This is stuff that's typically hard for people to grasp if they're looking at it on a computer screen. One of the reasons is if you've ever done any kind of drafting, let me do a quick little sketch here. What you get is a screen. Wrong tool. There we go. You get is a screen that's divided up into quadrants.
Into a grid. So. Yes, we've all used graph paper.
You have 4 major quadrants like this. Mm-hmm. And what you end up with is a top, side, and front view. So you might have your top over here, top, and then you have maybe the front side over here.
Yes.
And then you have maybe another face over here. Farce. And then those three views end up compiling into what is the 3D view over here. Yes. Yeah. So if you're trying to build this thing, and you're looking at the top of the roof of the thing, and you've got the front of the house, and then you've got the side of the place over here, and it's kind of a disconnect of this 3D world that people have. And then what you end up with though is this 3D type of object thingy over here, and this is a really bad
all 3D tools, Alias Wavefront, they all do this, and those are the different viewports that you have. And you have lighting and all kinds of stuff.
People have different levels of what they can visualize in their head and whatnot. I think that throws a lot of people for a loop. They open up a tool like Blender or 3D Max or whatever. Sure. They look at it or Autodesk even. They're like, whoa, what is all this stuff? And they delete, uninstall, and they're off to the next thing. So this thing, it lets you edit that 3D world inside the 3D world, because you have the VR headset on. Yes. Basically, you stand inside the world, and you're viewing it in actual dimensions, right? So if you have a house, you're standing outside the house, and it's the door is as tall as a door should be. That's another thing that's hard to grasp on a flat 2D surface, is the scale of stuff. If you're doing level design for video games, especially, you draw this thing inside of your editor, and then you load up the game, and your door's 25 feet tall, and you're like, oh,
your ratios are all off. Right. Yeah, I've seen this before.
So make a long story short, what you do in here is you build it you experience it in the actual environment, but you press a button on your controller and it teleports you out. Picture like a dollhouse. You're outside of that thing that you were just standing inside of, and then it is a miniature that you can pick up the little itty bitty pieces and move around these miniature chairs and whatnot inside the dollhouse. And there's lots of intuitive ways to interact with these things and resize them and link events to them, and I thought it was just phenomenal. It's this is taking level design to a whole new place, where people can easily create content. And they're programmatic in ways where, you can build games and things. You can be creative and make your own 3D, VR game experiences with these drag and drop tools. So I think it will be a pretty big hit when it starts going mainstream. I think I've seen some of the creative stuff people have done with Minecraft, like you mentioned, and Minecraft tools are not as intuitive as these are. They're a little bit cumbersome to work with because you're in that game mode when you're building with the stuff.
Yep.
Where this you can zoom out fully and just tinker with stuff as if it's, like I said, a dollhouse or something. You can see in this kind of image back here. Where you're kind of in this zoomed out environment, and everything is just miniaturized for you to pick up and kind of manipulate. So
cool. I won't use it. I'll go out and experience real life. Thank you. So
I think this will be a big hit, especially for a younger generation. That's
great.
Especially ones that are kind of cooped up at home.
Sure.
And they want to create, a playhouse for their friends and make, they can basically do some entry-level game design with this and create little mini games for their friends to jump in and play. And I think that leads to other career paths that they
it's not going to happen. You need logic to underpin those things. So that's where Scratch is probably a better environment for them.
There is logic available, and this is what I'm saying.
Yeah, whatever.
So it's hard to see in these tiny screenshots here, but they have this gizmos section, and there are actual interactive bits that you can.
Well, if they make it like Scratch, then it's got potential. So there you go.
Yeah, in game design, you have basically like cubes that you can resize and place. They're called triggers. So if you walk on a platform,
sure,
for example, it triggers some events to happen. So there's a full trigger system that looks like it's built in. I haven't done too much in it yet. I've just kind of checked it out. But you can build basic games with this, like laser tag and stuff I've seen already. So very neat. I want to learn more about it. I think it's going to be kind of cool. So that's up for sign up. It's invite only, I think, at this point. So you can't just like jump straight in, but if you sign up, you'll get an email to load it on your Oculus and give it a try. It was a little buggy still, so it kept breaking out of VR and showing what they call pass-through intermittently, which is kind of annoying. So pass-through is a mode where it shows view through the cameras that are doing the spatial recognition, so you don't trip over crap while you're walking around with your headset on. It randomly kept triggering that, so I don't know if it was just I needed to reboot or if it was a bug, but it seems like it's a little buggy yet. So we'll see how it turns out. I'll keep playing with it. I'll let you all know. That's it for us, John.
Cool.
That's all I've got. That's all I've got to anger your inner old man today. It's just more face hacking from Facebook.
Yes.
All right,
they're
everybody.
Really living up to they're really living up to their name. So
we've got more shows on Code It Live all week, so just hit the follow button. I won't have my Blazor show on Wednesday this week because I have a conference to virtually attend, so I won't have that, but we have other great hosts that will be on all week long, so make sure you hit follow and check us out. John, thanks once again for bringing all the awesome content and conversation, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.